Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zether, back at it again with the finale to What If Naruto Had Half Hot, Half Cold. I know a lot of you guys have actually been waiting for this part to drop, and I do actually apologize for the lack of, content in terms of this series. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I had a bit of a rough time getting ideas, and I was basically just burnt out with this series. I don't know what it was. For some reason, I just couldn't find any motivation to basically keep it going. But today, I basically decided that I might as well get it done since, it'd be a dishonor to the series. It's pretty dope, and I know a lot of you guys actually liked it, considering the first part has 10K views. But anyways, since I don't exactly want to disappoint, I'm going to be dropping 2 videos this day. So after you guys are done with this, definitely go check out a Golden Touch Deku, which is actually the finale as well. And on Friday, I'm actually going to be dropping the finale to Amaterasu Flame Deku. So if you guys are excited for that, definitely go drop a like down below. And, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe since, a lot of you guys actually aren't subscribed. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into the recap and then get started. All right. So on the last part, we had essentially ended up going over the Chunin exams. And we had ended up talking about how Jiraiya had ended up fighting and ended up beating Naruto. And by Chunin exams, I basically mean, like the forest, them returning to the Hidden Leaf Village, the first fights with Kiba and Naruto and stuff like that. The Forest of Death, the exams, the Leaf fight, all that stuff. Now, as you guys remember, Ino is actually on Team 7, and she was actually training to try to catch up with the rest of the team. So this is when we're now actually going to just go back to where, Jiraiya had ended up fighting Naruto and beating him, so Naruto could realize that Jiraiya was actually going to be great in terms of a sensei, or somebody to teach him and how to advance in his, his as a ninja. As this is when Naruto would basically acknowledge Jiraiya and his talent, as this is when we were now actually going to have basically a training for the next month or so. As Jiraiya, for this next month, he would actually end up teaching Naruto the Rasengan, which Naruto would actually end up learning after a week of training, after he would actually end up realizing the same things that he did in canon. Except in this time, Deku would have actually learned a couple more attacks, such as, the water, it's different, just basically a bunch of weird attacks that Jiraiya uses, like the wind bullet jutsu, stuff like, how to summon a toad, and how to basically control the Nine Tails chakra. But he also ended up learning, as I already said, the Rasengan. And in this version, since Naruto's a bit more of a prodigy, he would have actually ended up realizing and learning how to add ice nature and fire nature into the Rasengan, as he would have actually created 2 different variants to the Rasengan that he's actually going to be using a lot. But, it's going to be pretty dope. It's definitely going to be something that's going to be coming into play later on. Now, this is when we're now actually going to jump on back to the finals, as we're now actually going to be having the fight between Naruto and Neji Hyuga. As soon as Naruto steps into the ring, Neji would proceed to tell Naruto that this fight was over before it even started, as Naruto would begin to chuckle, as at this point, Naruto would be wearing basically the same clothes that Todoroki wears as his hero suit, as he would pull up in that little jumpsuit, as this is when Neji would get into a fighting stance, as Naruto would basically realize that Neji needs good footwork in order to fight, as this is when Naruto would decide that he's gonna make things a little harder for Neji, as this is when Naruto would proceed to say, Inferno style, fire, fire domain, as he would have his fire basically expand all over the floor of the arena, as Neji would proceed to use his rotation, as he would have all of the fire around him dispelled, as this is when that would have actually been a disturbance for Neji, as Neji would have actually been, not realizing what was going on. But in that time, Naruto ended up creating an ice clone, which basically ended up going behind Neji and basically hitting him very high into the air, as Naruto would basically start pretty much a primary lotus, copying the same attack that Neji had done, as this is when Naruto would try to grab Neji and go for that attack, but seeing that Neji is basically Rock Lee's teammate, he would have been able to avoid it, causing Naruto to basically get off balance, and Neji would proceed to hit him with one of the palms. This is when Neji would proceed to destroy the Naruto with a bunch of palm strikes, as it would be revealed that Naruto was actually a clone, as Naruto would appear behind him, using a bit of the Nine Tails' chakra, as this is when Naruto would have basically charged charged up a vermilion fire Rasengan, as he would have chucked it into Neji's gut, as Neji would have been sent hurling into the wall, as Neji would basically be declared knocked out, as Naruto would be the winner of the match. As this is when we would then have the fight between Sasuke and Gaara, which would essentially go to canon, except this time Sasuke would do a lot better and actually end up harming Gaara way more than he did in canon, which would actually result in something way better happening. Except this time when Gaara ends up going crazy and he would try to essentially run away, Naruto would actually step in and he would actually end up, basically freezing Gaara's feet in place, causing Gaara to basically be, caught off guard. And in that split moment, Naruto would have ended up charging up an Ice Rasengan, as he would have shoved it into Gaara's stomach, freezing Gaara in place. As this is when we would actually have a very different thing happening, as this would have actually ended up changing the attack on the village quite drastically. As when Orochimaru would have tried to fight against the Lower Third, Naruto would have actually had enough time to get into that barrier with them. As this time, we would actually have a fight between Naruto and Hiruzen, or his adoptive father, I guess you could say. As Naruto would look towards Orochimaru, who would have previously tried to attack Team 7, but this is when Naruto would be enraged by the fact that Orochimaru had tried to even harm Hiruzen. What if he actually ended up taking him down? As Naruto's rage would have ended up overwhelming Naruto, as Naruto would be coated in a chakra cloak, the one-tailed, as Naruto's eyes would begin to turn red, and his whiskers would become even longer, as his features would become more animalistic. As this is when we would now have a supercharged Naruto, with ice and fire going off of each one of his sides, as Orochimaru would be staring at him saying, "Magnificent, I must have his body." As this is when Naruto would rush towards Orochimaru, basically prompting Orochimaru to try to use the summoning jutsu, but before the reanimation jutsu, but Naruto wouldn't give him the time of day, as Hiruzen would have stepped in there using the Enema Staff, as they would both overwhelm Orochimaru with a flurry of attacks, and Naruto would create the multi-shadow clone jutsu, as these would actually be created with fire and ice, as Naruto would have created a bunch of swords for each one of their counterparts, each being fire, ice, as he would basically just overwhelm Orochimaru in terms of numbers, as Orochimaru would basically be forced to retreat, but before he was actually able to, Hiruzen would have basically jumped in there and tried to use the Reaper Death Seal, as Naruto would have jumped in there and kicked him away, as this is when basically Jiraiya would have busted in, as he would have broken down the barrier that was between them, as this is when all three of them would have actually ended up catching Orochimaru and basically restraining him so that he couldn't run away, as they would put him into prison and basically put him in jail, as they would then proceed to have a talk with Orochimaru and discover where all of his bases are, as Orochimaru would inform them that the Akatsuki is going to be looking for Naruto, and that regardless of how long he has to wait, he'll be taken out of here sooner or later. As this is when, basically Hiruzen would look towards themselves, as Jiraiya would basically tell Naruto that they're going to be having to go on a training journey. As this is when we would actually have Naruto and Jiraiya go on the journey much sooner than in canon, since Hiruzen ended up surviving, meaning that Tsunade was not actually needed, and since there was less casualty, they had no real reason for Tsunade to actually be called. So this is when we now actually jump into the time skip, and let's just say that Naruto's gonna be pretty much a god after this. His abilities would consist of turning himself into ice and fire, meaning that you can't hurt him. He would basically have Obito's intangibility. He would be able to crank up his flames to the point where his flames were as hot as the Amaterasu, and his ice was as cold as Gray's Demon Slayer ice. As this Naruto is god tier. As do I even got to explain it, guys? Naruto would arrive back at the village, as he would do exactly what he'd done in canon, basically landing on top of the pole, reminiscing on everything that had happened. As this is when Ino would actually rush towards Naruto, basically so glad to see him, as Naruto would basically just have a little bit of a recap with Ino, as Ino would have actually asked Naruto if he wants to go grab a bite to eat, as Naruto would say that it's his treat, as they would go out to grab a bite of ramen, and it would definitely be considered a date. As Naruto and Ino would proceed to go back to Naruto's place, as we would have some good old studying going down. Yes sir, Naruto and Ino gonna start clapping, and we would actually get something way better than Boruto, something that's actually useful. Now, this This is when we would now actually have, Ino actually getting, well, just Prega. I might have messed that up. A lot of you guys are probably calling me dumb in the comments. Anyways, she would basically be Prego, as we would have the fight with Team 7 going down, as it would be Sasuke, Ino, and Naruto, as they would swiftly be able to take down Kakashi, winning the bell test. And this is when we would basically go on the Gaara retrieval mission, as actually, no, there wouldn't be a Gaara retrieval mission, as this version of Gaara would have never actually had the Talk No Jutsu, meaning that he went down the wrong path and their Jinchuriki was taken and killed. But the Hidden Sand Village still needed their Jinchuriki back, so they sent they still sent Team 7, so yes, there would be. Now, this is when a lot of things would have actually ended up changing, as Ino would have actually not have had the training of, Lady Tsunade, or not have actually ended up learning that stuff. Instead, she would have actually been trained by Kurenai, Asuma, Kakashi, and, Hiruzen. As her training would have definitely made her rise up to a new level of strength. As she would actually be informed of, the Slug Sage mode, as she would have actually ended up learning that during the time skip. As Naruto would have actually ended up learning Toad Sage mode over the time skip as well, and he would actually have full mastery over the Nine Tails, something that I actually forgot to mention. He and Naruto would have actually came to a sort of an agreement, and after Naruto would have actually been able to best the Nine Tails in battle, it would have had to submit to Naruto. And it would have basically realized that Naruto was way too strong for him. And, that would pretty much be what happens. As this is when, the same stuff would happen, except in this version, when they would encounter Deidara and Sasori, they would end up taking them down, except Naruto would be able to catch Sasori before he, basically dies, and he would actually ask him where the Akatsuki hideout is. As, Sasori would give them the intel about, the bridge, and they would proceed to go to the bridge. Actually, no, they wouldn't go to the bridge. That wouldn't actually end up happening in this version. So instead of that happening, we would actually have a bit of a different timeline, something that would stray from the original counterpart. As in this version of events, this version of Naruto would pretty much proceed to basically hunt down each and every member of the Akatsuki along with Jiraiya, as he would have actually ended up going with him to the land of rain, to the land hidden in the rain, as they would have actually ended up fodderizing pain. And in this version, since Jiraiya went back, he would have actually learned perfect Sage mode, as Jiraiya and Naruto would have ended up having that battle, as Naruto would have amped Jiraiya up to the point where he could have done it himself if he wanted to, considering that Naruto has the ability to pretty much give other people the Nine Tails' chakra, as Jiraiya's stats would have been amped, and he would have actually been able to defeat his old student Nagato, leaving for a better, a thematically better ending in terms of that battle. And this is when we would now have the rest of the Akatsuki members basically being taken down, as, the Fourth Great Shinobi War would actually be stopped before it could even begin, seeing that this version of Naruto would actually be able to take down the Obito as soon as he basically tried to do what he'd done in canon, basically announce the Fourth Great Shinobi War, as Naruto would have taken him down swiftly, as Obito would have had no choice but to fight him, as Naruto would have actually hit him with a strong attack off rip as soon as Obito showed his face, causing Obito to have too much battle damage, as they would end up getting into a battle and Obito would end up dying there, as the rest of the Akatsuki members would be taken down swiftly, of course with the Itachi and Sasuke battle still happening, and Itachi ending up losing, except this time not because he was holding back, but because Sasuke was actually able to do it. This means that the original timeline would actually end up being disregarded, meaning that there would never be no, Shinobi Alliance, and Naruto would have single-handedly been able to defeat the entire Akatsuki all by himself, stopping the Eye of the Moon Plan and stopping Madara and Kaguya from even being revived in the first place. Now, this is when we're now actually going to jump over to the events of the movie, as Naruto would have actually still ended up saving Hinata, except in this time when Hinata would have actually revealed her feelings for Naruto, Naruto would have told her that their feelings weren't actually received back towards, Hinata, as we would still have Sasuke ending up marrying, uselessness, as we would end up having, a couple of normal things happen just like in canon, except this time Boruto would still be born, except this version of Boruto would not be useless like its original counterpart, seeing that, this version would have actually had a better Naruto there, and this version of Naruto, after the, oh my god, I forgot to include the most important part, he would have actually had the costume change of Todoroki in the thumbnail by the time, and at this point Naruto would basically be a drip lord, as he would basically end up going to the academy and becoming a teacher just like the original Naruto did. And this is when we would now actually have a very good and normal ending for the Naruto story. A lot of the events in Naruto would have actually been, changed, since this version of Naruto would be a lot more, stronger, smarter, and basically even more of a genius than the original Naruto that we have in the original canon. Seeing that this version of Naruto was trained by Hiruzen from a young age, he had Jiraiya there, way sooner from the get-go, and this version of Jiraiya would have actually been prompted to teach Naruto things way faster, as well as with his, his quirk, which would have actually advanced in levels that were never going to be able to be seen by normal people, as Naruto would be basically God tier, arriving at the level of basically surpassing the level of Kaguya, as this is where we're actually going to be wrapping up this amazing What If. I hope you guys enjoyed this series of What If Naruto would have hot, have cold, since it did actually, it did have a pretty great run on the channel, but all good things have to come to an end, as you guys already know. Now, as I always do in all my videos, it has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.